Right, with 6 minutes to go, or 7 minutes, something like that, time to do a quick sound check, make sure it's all working. Looks okay at my end. If you can hear me and you can see me, hi. If you could just pop a comment in the live chat, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. See you at past. Hello everyone, welcome to In Studio Live, the 79th edition. It's Independence Day, it's Sunday the 4th of July, and we are looking at the zone system. It's the closest I get to doing an American live stream, I'm afraid, and that's looking at something invented by an American photographer. So anyway, let's get a move on, shall we? And have a look at what we've got on the show tonight. So on the show tonight we have, well, I don't know, I'm hoping it'll be a short show. It depends how many questions we have coming in on there. I have got a little bit of image feedback via email, and I've got more by email than I have by Facebook this week. Very little on Facebook this week, actually. So that won't take long. The email ones, I'm going to play in a section of a video from one of the Facebook group members as well. And our main topic is going to look at the zone system and how that can help us with our digital photography. The zone system, as I'll explain later, was created by Ansel Adams, the famous photographer. And in many ways, it doesn't apply to digital photography. In many ways, it does apply to digital photography. So I'm going to try and just bring out the bits that you need to know. I'm not going to go through into great detail about what the zone system is, but some of the things which will help us as digital photographers, I'm going to talk about on there. We're back to our before and after challenge, and I'm issuing you with a new challenge this week, which kind of ties in with the zone system and that, so we'll see with that as we get to it. And of course the few images I've got from Facebook, I'll talk about those, and I will be announcing my image of the week again this week. Will it be yours? Wait and see. Right. So it is an interactive show, as the regulars will know. We have a chat going alongside. Here it is. It's the YouTube chat. So if you can comment in there, it really helps me actually, just seeing the chatter that's going on there. Then I know I'm not just sitting in an empty studio talking to thin air. So it's really helpful having all that and knowing that you guys are responding to things I'm saying. If you have any questions, it's a Q&A part of that as well. If things come up, you know, that wasn't clear, do ask questions in there and I will pick them up on that. So let's get started with your images tonight. And I'm going to head over into Lightroom, just to remind anyone who's watching this perhaps for the first time, that if you want me to give you feedback on your images, please email them to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. I will pick ones from the Facebook group, but it's far better if you can email them to me or we transfer them to me, which is even better, because that way I get higher resolution, I get more information, and I can talk a little bit more eloquently about the images on there. So let's head over to Lightroom and see what we've got. So let's start with Gary's images. Gary Platt, who regularly submits images. Tonight he's sent me 2 images, and if I go full screen on this one, in fact I'm going to go full screen so you can see it really best I can do with that. This is a theatre shot from Gary, I think probably taken up in Edinburgh. I love the backlighting on there, Gary, and I know you've made a creative decision to center the subjects around the light in the center of the image on there. If that was me, I would have cropped it slightly differently on there. I'll have a look at that in a moment. So I would have done, let's go to the develop module. I would have done something probably slightly more conventional on it. Something like that. Maybe just move them off to one side so that they are still the focus of attention, and that we've got the detail in there. Now, looking at the settings for this, and I need to go to right. It was f2.8, which is my go-to option with theatre photography. Always shoot at the widest I can, and the fixed focus. No, it's a 70-200 lens, so nice and sharp at 70mm. So right, yeah. I perhaps in camera would have been tempted to come in a little bit tighter on them. You've got that option with that lens. I do like the backlighting on it, and yeah, there is something to be said for your crop. I have to say. The more I'm looking at it, I do like that. I do like it. I'm not saying mine's better. I'm not saying yours is better. Just two different ways of achieving a similar result on there. But really nice. I'm assuming you have adjusted the white balance to give it this slightly sepia effect. That doesn't look like theatre lighting to achieve that to me. Might be wrong on that, but I think that's more done in post, but nice image. The second image that Gary sent me was this one, which was using a Lens Baby lens to create really an interesting black and white image of some leaves of a plant in the garden. So looking at the shooting information on it, well, lens obviously isn't listed on here on that, so very little more I can say on it. 2,500th of a second. Wow, that's fast with it. Yeah, we don't have obviously we don't have an aperture with it being a Lens Baby. It's worked really well on it. Love the bokeh effect with it, that's both foreground and background. Black and white conversion is good. Some nice rich black tones, some highlights on there. I don't think I'd change anything with it, to be honest, on that. Right, now moving on to the next set of images. Before I talk about these are from Andy May, who's a member of the group, and he posted this image to the Facebook group, and he posted a link to a video he created when he made this image. So it's a 9-minute long video, and the link to it is down in the description, and I would encourage you, after my live stream, not during, after, you go and have a look at that video. But what I would like to do is I'd like to just play in now a short section of that video which covers a little bit of the photography he was doing on the beach, and then what he was doing with the beach huts as well. So let's have a look at that, and then I'll come and give some feedback about the image.
So the sun's now shining quite nicely down across onto the groin that's popping out there. So I'll show you what I've got on the back of the camera. So that's what I'm looking at, with the groin coming in from the left hand side, the sun shining on it. I'll probably photo stack these on top of each other. I've taken one, they're both at, oh, taken three actually, all at f11, focusing, you can see the focus point just there, with f11 it should all come into focus, and on the histogram I've taken one stop under. You can see the histogram there, so it doesn't look too bad. I've taken another one stop over, or on rather, and then also one with one stop over the exposure. So it may end up as a bit of a HDR image, but we'll process it in Lightroom later and see what it comes out like. But you can see there's some quite nice cloud formations now, so not all was lost. Looking over at those beach huts, that actually does look, I think it could make quite a good shot, but the sun is quite a long way up there now, so it's going to be quite a difficult one. If I do manage to do it, I'll pop it up on the screen. Well, there you go. I decided to take one. I'll pop the picture up in a second and we'll see what it looks like. Backlit beach huts with a bit of the cliff tops in the distance and the sea coming in. I'll give you another quick look around, and then that is it. I'm going to call it a day.
So thank you, Andy, for allowing me to share that extract from your YouTube video. And as I say, folks, do go and look Andy up on YouTube. He's got some great stuff on there, particularly those of you who are landscape photographers, because he talks through his thought processes as he's creating his images. Right, the shot. That's the final image that Andy created. I want to just wind back a bit, because as you perhaps gathered from the video, it's an HDR shot in the sense that it's bracketed and then combined together. So the three shots that he worked with. Now, the way Andy did it, looking at the data, is that he was doing manual exposure, spot metering, and basically the shots were 1/25th of a second, 13th of a second, and 1/8th of a second. Those are the three shots that we've got here. And quite rightly, with it being backlit, what Andy did was to do the quote overexposed shot to be able to get all the detail in the shadow areas on that image, and then the one stop under shot here was to capture the sky. Now, I just want to go into the develop module with this, because a little bit of feedback for you, Andy, on this. I would have gone a little bit further, because looking at the histogram, bear in mind this is the raw file, we have still got clipped highlights here. Now, because it is a raw file, we can bring back most of that. And you see, as I'm moving it on, most of it comes back. But if I go the whole way and do the exposure, you can see that eventually we haven't got the detail in this line here. So I would have been tempted to do one more stop or further down, just to get a fraction more detail in that that little bit of light sky there. So just reset all of that on there. Having said all that, the final image, when I find it, has worked well. That's the HDR version. You can see, even with the HDR version, there's a little bit of it still clipped, even though you can see with Andy's settings on the HDR that he's brought the highlights a long way down to prevent that. And then the final version there, he's done a little bit more to it between the two. So the HDR version, and then even more, slightly different processing for the version with the border and the signature on there. There is one other thing that I would have done with this, and that is this edge here isn't truly vertical, in my opinion, or it wasn't on the one I downloaded from Facebook. So I think it just needs that very slight tilt to it, just to sort that edge out on there. I think there's just that fraction of a tilt needed on it. But other than that, it's a fantastic image, Andy. I really do like what you've done with the final version, the colorings on there. You've kept the orangeness of dawn in it, and you've really made the image work. And it's interesting, looking at the rest of your video, this wasn't what you set out to shoot. And that's so often the case, isn't it? We go to a location, we have in our minds something we want to achieve, and then we come up with something else. And sometimes that something else is better than what we originally thought. And that's all about the importance of working the scene. I just want to, one thing I hadn't talked about was the settings properly. Oops, let's just go to here. ISO 400 with it. Yeah, reasonable choice on there. I'd have been tempted, because if I was on tripod, I'd be tempted just to bring the ISO down even further. Now, it may be that with your camera that you get zero noise at ISO 400. I always feel there's just a hint of it there. So I'd be tempted to bring that down just a fraction more and do slightly longer exposures to compensate for that. F11, good choice in terms of your aperture, because that's nicely sharp and nice and sharp there. And I did notice on the video, on the back of camera, and it's worth pointing out where Andy was focusing. He was focusing about 1/3 into the beach huts. That's because 2/3 of your depth of field is always behind your focus point. So there's no point focusing all the way up there. Go about 2/3 or so in. So that was the focus point. That allowed Andy, with his depth of field, to get the whole thing. And at 29mm, easily the whole thing will be in focus on there. So really great image, Andy. Just those couple of minor things. And to be, just for explanation to others, I tend to be a little bit more picky with the more experienced photographers on here, and just trying to push you to the next level with it. So thank you for sharing that. Let me have a look what's been going on in chat whilst I've been talking. Right, we have on here a question from Gary. What range of stops are best for HDR? I've found with 4 stops I'm never that happy with the result, but 3 stop seems better. That's an interesting one, Gary. I think it depends on the software that you are using to do your HDR combining with that. I mean, we found a couple of things that Affinity, for example, seems to give a much better result if you pre-process the raw files into JPEGs and then combine them together on there. With it. So I've not really tried the difference between 4 images and then, oh, sorry, 4 stop. Yeah, I'm assuming 4 images at 1 stop apart on it. Yeah, I've never really tried to find the difference between. My decision is always based on really how many images do I need to make sure I have got the full range of brightnesses. If we look back several live streams ago when I talked about HDR, there's an example, it's either on the HDR one or the night one, or maybe even on both, the police station shot I did, and I needed a huge range covering on there because the sign which my client was paying me to photograph was so bright compared to anything else that I had to cover an awful lot. And I personally prefer to just go 1 stop between until I've got everything on it. Andy has also said that he tried to edit out the bog/dog sign on there. Oh, hi John Bamber on there. Not got to your image yet. That will be coming up a little bit later. Right, I'm just going to nip back into Lightroom there and see if I can edit out said dog sign. Let me find a suitable one. Ah, I see what you mean. It doesn't quite line up on that one on there, and there's the sign. So what I'm going to do with this, going to develop and zoom right in on it. I'm going to just see whether I can do this in Lightroom. Should be possible, but let's see whether I can. And I would use the spot removal brush, and I'm just going to try the obvious sort of paint out and see what it does. It's not bad, it's still not quite joined it up properly, but then if I move that around, oh, and this is so slow to do when I'm streaming, it's not exactly fast when I'm not, and I'm just trying to line it up a little bit better. Right, and what we find is the top, if I've got the top one on there, the bottom one doesn't line up. That's perspective for you. So, okay, so it's going to be tricky doing it all in one go like that. So with something like that then, I would probably think about going over into Photoshop to do it. So let's edit in Photoshop and hope this doesn't crash my machine, because it's a big file, that. And this may take up a couple of moments to actually open up. Dum-de-dum-dum. Photoshop spinning wheel, wonderful. Right, let's zoom right in and into 100%. Right, we've got that there. So my natural reaction at this point would be to try content aware fill. So let me grab an area to try and fill with it. And you'll notice I'm putting it between the line and the sign on it. Try and do that. Right, so now edit, content aware fill. And it's giving me an area I can go with. Now, looking at that preview, that's not bad at all, actually, with it. So if I just say apply, let's see what we get. And I'm going to go okay, actually. Control D. That's not bad at all. Now there's still a little bit on there, a little bit of a bump on the a couple of those lines. So those I would then fix by adding another layer using the clone brush. Hold Alt down about here and go along till that's on the line there, and just paint along to just, whoops, just sort that one out. And let's do the same down here. Line that up and just go along, get rid of the bump. We've got another bump down here, so again, there's the line up on there, not as much. So we've got that. Now we've got a little bit of a vertical line that's been left. So again, I'm just going to grab from here and just get a little bit rid of that. I only need to do in the middle really, just to break it up so that it's not there. And I'd say that's pretty good at removal on there. So that's how I would do it, Andy. It's not too tricky, but you just need to know which tools will do the best job. So basically I've done content aware to get me more or less in the vicinity of where I wanted, which was that. That's what content aware gave me. And then I did a little bit of brushwork myself with the clone stamp just to refine it on the end. You can see the difference there. That's making on it. So hopefully that's you found that helpful. I'm not going to save that. No. So that's how I would have done it on there. So slight diversion. Let's head back and see what's going on in the chat. Right, we've got a question, which let's see. In a question, I quite often try doing HDR images. Am I wrong doing this? Is it cheating? No, absolutely not cheating. Use your tools. We're going to one of the things I'm going to talk about with the zone system actually does impact on this, because HDR is something that we can do that Ansel Adams couldn't, because he was working in film. You couldn't do HDR in film. You could do a lot of manipulation with film in the darkroom, and he did. But I believe that if Ansel Adams was around today, he'd be doing HDR because what his zone system is all about is making sure you can capture the full range of brightnesses in there, and that's what HDR is all about. So that question really ties in with what we're going to be looking at tonight, and I think it's an important question. And no, it's not cheating. It can be overdone. It can look artificial, but it can also be a style thing. And for some of the things that you're doing, and the sort of things where it's really the only option if you want to capture that full range of brightnesses. Right, okay, let's move on with what we're looking at tonight. And let me just say, if you are new to watching the live stream, if you find it helpful, then please subscribe. That helps me, it helps my visibility. And hit that little bell icon so you get notified when there's new content there, because I do post other things to the channel as well. If you want to go and hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it, because only 5 of you have done it so far. So I've got 13 watching, so the other 8 of you, go hit the like button now. And if you're able to share about the live stream with others, then please do so, because again, that helps me. I find that I really appreciate people doing that. I have a Facebook group where we carry on the conversation, link down below, and I have a newsletter, also linked down below. on there. Quick advert. I've got a couple of events coming up at my studio for those of you who are local. Friday the 16th, in just under 2 weeks' time now, we've got the Red Room, one of my famous Red Room nights, where we have a model lingerie to nude. Everything is red blinds, red sofa, red background, red lipstick, the lot. And I've got a fantastic model in Lily for this. I was doing some work with her for her portfolio, and I decided to set up the Red Room stuff. And she was absolutely brilliant for it. So I put the event on simply because she was so good at that shoot I did, that I wanted to share that with you. So it's £60 for that, but it's a maximum of 3 photographers. So it's a premium event with just 3 people in attendance on there, one place already sold. And I've got my full day one. This is a bargain, £100, maximum 3 people again, with the rain and shower setup here in the studio. And that's at the end of the month on the 31st. So, right, okay, the zone system. This is what we want to talk about tonight. I do this with a little bit of trepidation, because I'll hold my hand up and apologise at this point. I am not an expert on the zone system at all. Why am I not an expert? Because I don't need to be on it. A lot of what the zone system is about isn't particularly relevant to digital photographers, because it's about what you do in processing the film and then in printing, neither of which we do in a darkroom anymore. However, certain parts of it really can help us with our photography and help us understand bits of the photography. And I reckon for most of you, you're probably using bits of the zone system without even knowing about it. So let me give you a little bit of background and then talk about how we take the lessons of the zone system into our digital world. As I said, it's created by Ansel Adams, the great American photographer. He was born in 1902 and died in 1984. So he never saw the digital photography world, although if you look at a couple of quotes from him, he sort of foresaw it as well, that one day images might be captured electronically, he said. So I think he foresaw that coming, but didn't live to see it. He's mostly known as a black and white landscape photographer, although he does portrait, again, predominantly black and white, although I have seen colour from him as well. And it's mainly the American West, although he has done portraits, or did do portraits of American presidents as well. I'm not sure whether it was the official portrait of Jimmy Carter was done by him, but he certainly did a portrait of Jimmy Carter, and that was in colour. And the area he's most noted for photographing is Yosemite National Park. And that sort of area. So this is a classic Ansel Adams scenic image. And the thing to take away from this is, one of the things we've been talking about many times is that contrast. You've got the deep blacks on effectively one edge of the range, and you've got the highlights on the other. It's got that full range of brightnesses in there. There's nothing lost in terms of the histogram. It's using the full range of brightnesses. And even with something like this is an evening view of a lake. Personally, I'd like to see some foreground in there, but far be it from me to criticise Ansel Adams. But again, notice the deep blacks in the mountains, and the bright highlights in the clouds, and the reflections of the clouds on there. He's got that full range of brightnesses. And here, Old Faithful, the geyser in is it Yosemite, Yellowstone, where he's photographed that. Again, the deep blacks and the white, but the detail is still there in at both ends. When you look at one of his images, you don't get plugged up blacks, you don't get blown out highlights, but you've got that full range with them. So that's what Ansel Adams is known for. How did he achieve it? Well, he created this system that's known as the zone system. It is complex. Most photographers don't understand it, and I'm one that doesn't fully understand it, and I'll admit that, because, to be perfectly honest with you, I can't be bothered learning all the percentages that have things to do with how you then develop your images in the lab on there. And the printing is different. What he would do in printing and what we do in digitally. So the thing's different, and the whole process of the zone system, the two go hand in hand, as we'll see as we go on. It was designed for black and white film photography primarily, although it does have application elsewhere. And as I said, it's a combination of in-camera techniques and darkroom techniques. So the full zone system isn't relevant to us anymore, but the in-camera part can be and can be helpful. I've just seen a comment over on the chat, which I'll pull up, and Gary says, Ansel Adams had a massive range. Some of his architectural and people images are superb, but his memory is overshadowed by his landscape work. Yeah, just want to say he did do much more than that. There's a lot of stuff that he did. But he's known for his landscape stuff, and he used his zone system across everything that he did. So we're going to just look at how to use the zone system with getting an exposure, and some of the lessons of the post-production side, and how digital techniques can be used in place of some of the things that he would have done in the darkroom, because the darkroom sections really don't apply to us as digital photographers. Right, so here's the zone system. What he did was he divided the full range of brightnesses up into 9 + 2 zones. And the +2 are the true black and true white. And if you want to think of that in the digital world, I've put the hex codes for them on the chart. So 0 is 0000, and 10 is FFFFF. On there. Rather bizarrely, he tended to name the zones in Roman numerals, which is a bit of a problem because Roman numerals do not have any notation for 0. So we have an Arabic notation of 0 followed by 9 Roman notations on there. And each one of those zones covers one stop. And zone 5 is mid-grey. That is the value. That is the area that, given nothing else, the camera will try to expose for mid-grey of it, which is bang in the middle of Ansel Adams' zone system with it. So right, let's look at these. Effectively 9 + 2 zones, and what do they equate to in real life? Well, zone 0 is actually total black. There's no data in there, and it's phrased as the only thing you might find is a little bit of noise in it, and it should appear totally black on a print. Remember, he's talking black darkroom on there, so it's total black. There's no detail. Moving up to zone 1, this is near black. There's not really any detail there, and this is effectively your threshold. You don't want to go into 0 in the same way you don't want to go into zone 10 on there. So this is what would appear effectively as complete black in the print. There may be very slight tonality to it, but you're not going to see texture in there. That's what that is what your effectively your darkest blacks are in your image with it. Moving up to zone 2, this is where we start to see texture coming in. Very dark details in the shadows, deep tonalities, and this really represents the darkest part of an image. And you might, this is where that detail's starting to come through in there, just being visible in that. This is your deep shadows showing in there. Then zone 3 is a very dark grey. It's your textured backgrounds. So if you've got your rock faces, you're starting to see the texture in there, your shadows on the side of a tree. This is how dark materials get represented. Your texture details are in here, where you can start to see them. And this is your shadows, your standard shadows are starting to appear in this sort of area on there. Now, when we start getting up to 4, this starts to map onto more specific things at this point. So this is, he describes it as a medium dark grey. It equates to what dark green foliage would look like. It's what shadows on the side of the skin would look like. It's how you would represent someone with a dark skin tone. Shadows in landscape would be in this sort of area. And maybe the shadow side for Caucasian portraits. So that if you've got quite a contrasty look in sunlight, you're doing a portrait there, you've got a bright side to the face, you've got a dark side. This is the area that the dark side should be. So you can see the detail there, but it's clearly darker. Then we're in the mid-grey area. And this, if you've got an 18% grey card, this is the colour, the brightness that you've got there. It equates to, if you're photographing a nice clear northern sky in the US, it would come out in black and white, or should come out in this tone of brightness. Dark skin tones here, grey stone would come here, things like that. You've got plenty of detail visible in it. That's the sort of area we're at now as we're getting lighter. Then moving on, zone 7, Caucasian skin when it's brightly lit is in this area. No, 6, I can't do Roman numerals. Zone 6, so sand is in that. If you're doing a snow scene, and we'll come on to snow scenes in a minute, this is the area where the shadows should be for snow scenes. They should be at this point within this range of brightnesses on there. Then we start moving up. Zone 8, this is your off-white. This is bright, a light grey, white texture. No, 7, zone 7, yeah. It's light skin tones, so maybe your Nordic skin tones would be here. Silver hair, white with sort of side light on it, comes on this sort of area. And this is the sort of highest zone where you will get good details. Then zone 8, almost white. This is where you can get texture and still record something as white. This is where white snow sort of appears in there. And then 9 is the equivalent to the brightest white that you can get. There's not going to be any detail in there. Gleaming snow. So this is sunlight on snow type of brightness. Zone 10. I said you shouldn't have anything in there. That's not strictly true. It's actually the point where you'll get your specular highlights. So if you've got a If you're photographing a scene and there's a street light in there, you know it's going to blow out, and that's all you're going to do. That's your zone 10 for it. It's those specular highlights. If you were printing it, it would be the white of the paper. There'd be nothing in there. It's not like that white snow, which is your zone 9. You can see it's just that little bit brighter on it. So that's what the zones equate to. How do we use all this? And just understanding those zones helps us understand how the camera actually sees the world and how it behaves with the world. Now, as I've said already, the camera will assume when it's metering that it's trying to set everything to zone 5. Now, I want to give a little bit of a caveat on this, in that the way Ansel Adams would work and the way the zone system works, we are talking about spot metering. We're talking about metering a defined area. We're not talking about things like evaluative metering, where you meter the whole scene broken up, throw it through an algorithm and work out the best sort of exposure to try and capture everything. We are looking at just trying to pinpoint a particular element, setting the camera into spot metering mode and getting a reading off that particular item. And that's what we're working on with this. So whatever we point the camera at, the camera is dumb. It will assume that what we point the camera at is this zone 5, this mid-tone, which, unless it's in shadow or highly brightly lit, is skin tones, Caucasian skin tones anyway. And it will try to go for that. You point it at something else, for example, a snowfield, it will still try and make it this mid-tone, this zone 5 grey, this mid-grey, but we have to correct for it. But if we understand the zone system and what fits into the different zone systems, it's then easy to adjust that setting. So let me just move on and try and explain this a little bit. Black and white film is a very forgiving medium in terms of dynamic range. And the film stroke printing process and the developing process would give Ansel Adams effectively access to all 11 stops of dynamic range. We, with our cameras, may not. Now, some of the more recent cameras, my R5, for example, has a really good dynamic range. I'm kind of blown away a little bit with the dynamic range on it there. But I tend to assume most of the time that I've got a workable 6 stops. And if I assume that and I get anything either side of it, so much the better. And that works really well with Ansel Adams' zone system. So I've put the little scale directly below the zone there. And you can see the 0 in the middle where you'd set your meter is zone 5. And then you've got your compensation one way or the other, under or over exposing on that. And it maps to those zones. And what did we say? Really, that zone 2 to zone 8 are the key ones that we want to capture. So our camera is capable of doing that and getting a good rendition of those. So let's look at that zone 8 as an example of how we might use this. So we know that snow in sunlight is in zone 8. And we want that to appear, that sort of brightness, that zone 8 brightness on our final image. And if we want to meter that correctly, how do we do it? Well, we spot meter on that snow. The camera will then tell us that, or would try and put that in the middle, or the 0 would be in the middle. So we put the little caret marker at the bottom, not in the middle, we just move it up. If we're pointing it to snow, we move it up to +3. That's the correct place for it. So we can see when you adjust your exposure, instead of aiming it to be in the middle on 0, you aim it to be on whichever of those settings maps to the zone where you're metering. So in the case of white snow in sunlight, you just move your pointer to +3 when you take your reading. If you're in manual mode, you're setting everything yourself, move it up until the caret's at that point. Another example, dark green foliage, that's in zone 4, we said. So that, if we set that at 0 there, we're not going to get that in the correct place. We are going to end up with that dark green foliage being overexposed. So what do we need to do? We need to set an exposure where the marker equates to zone 4, which is -1 on the scale. Instead of putting it at 0, we put it at -1. That correctly exposes for the green foliage. It gives it the right rendition, and everything else in the scene will follow on there. Another example, Caucasian skin might be zone 5. So again, you would mark it 0, and that's the classic substitute reading, isn't it? Palm of the hand, you point the camera at your hand, and you set your exposure based on that, as long as you're in the right light. If you've got darker skin tones, then you would work that on +1. If you've got lighter skin tones, it might be -1 on that meter reading. So you can choose where you want to meter based on the zone system. Now, for negative film, one of the things that Ansel Adams always said was you expose for the shadows and process for the highlights. Now that might sound familiar, but different to something you've already heard. So I'm going to talk about that in this. So in other words, with negative film, you make sure that the shadow areas go no darker than zone 2. Based on where you're taking your meter readings from, you might need to change or underexpose, overexpose to do it, or rather just slightly overexpose slightly with negative film, remember, when creating the image, and then you can bring back all the highlight detail. That's what you can do with negative film, and negative film allows you a lot of latitude to bring back detail in the highlights. You've got no latitude to bring back detail in the shadows. Why is this? Think about it, it's negative, and the deep blacks is when that film is completely clear, transparent. So if it's completely clear, there's no choice there. Whereas the lighter areas are the darker bits of the negative, and there might be a range of how dark that is at that end. And so you can pull back information in the dark room when you're processing the film and when you're printing with it. So Ansel Adams always said, expose for the shadows, process for the highlights. So he chose his exposure based on how deep the shadows were. But that is negative film. That is working in a dark room. That is developing your film. That is printing your film. What about the digital world? Well, for the digital world, it's not negative, it's positive. So we need to do the opposite. And you will have heard people say this, expose for the highlights. In other words, make sure that your brightest parts of your image don't go beyond zone 9. Don't go into that zone 10, which is your blown out highlights. That's your blinkies, that's your flashing highlights on there. Make sure your your highlights stay in zones 8 and 9. The exception to that is, what's the one thing we can allow into zone 10? Specular highlights. So if you've got the street lamp in your shot and you know that's going to blow out just that little bit, or if you've got something that's sparkly and you just get those little specular highlights on there, that's fine. Those can go into zone 10. Those can be blown out. It doesn't matter. But anything that's important, like snow, sky, clouds, anything like that, keep them in effectively zone 9. In other words, make sure they don't blow out. And what we do in the digital world is we process digitally the image to recover the detail in the shadows. Now, does that mean you can just, well, we can just underexpose then and we just recover everything from the shadows? No. What this leads to is a technique for the best possible images known as ETTR, or exposed to the right. And what this is all about is making sure that you are as close to the right-hand side of the histogram as possible. Now, this is ETTR is a big topic in its own right, and I don't have time to go through it tonight. Maybe if people are interested, I'll cover it in a future week as a topic in its own right, about how we can get the best out of our images by using this technique, when we use it, and how it really helps us. And it's one of those that can be a little bit of a game changer. It's less important with some of the more recent cameras, which get a huge dynamic range anyhow, but it's also a good thing to understand on there. So I'm not going to talk about it tonight. I am just going to say, look at that as a technique. Maybe we can talk about it later. So that's my sort of background to, really, we're talking about that zone system. I hope it's given you an idea about how you can use just that little section of it to help with your photography. Now, just to say, the stream tonight is sponsored by you. Thank you to everyone who's bought me a cuppa. And just to say, if anyone doesn't know, if you find the live streams helpful and want to keep me going, then please buy me a cuppa. The link's there. It's also down below. And it's just a way of saying thank you, because it does cost me to produce these. And I've temporarily closed my academy as of this week, so I've got no more income from that. So I'm hoping that people will keep me in mind and keep me fueled up with cuppas. And I just want to say thank you to John Kiss for tonight's cuppa. So cheers. Thanks very much, John, on that. Before and after challenge. It's been going on for a while. Don't worry if you're behind. Do it at your own pace. Work through the different stages. You'll find all the videos here on the YouTube channel on it. And I'm not going to look at your images on that. Well, I am, but later on. And it's been going. And so far, I sent you off to create your before images. To 5 images of a particular location of your choosing. Then we looked at general rules for composition, an exercise on that, freezing and blurring the action, aperture and depth of field, focal length, night photography, exposure compensation, reflectors, fill-in flash, and this week ties in very nicely with what we've been looking at. Exercise 9 is all about black and white conversion. So I'm going to play in the video for that. Sorry, I'm going to overrun tonight, folks. My apologies, but here is the video. Hello, welcome to In Studio. I'm Ian M. Butterfield, and welcome to this 9th exercise in my before and after challenge. Today we're going to look at converting images to black and white. And I want to just deal with a few of the techniques very briefly, and then set you on your way to do your own conversion and to post your own findings to my Facebook group. If you don't know where the Facebook group is, have a look in the link down below this video. Right, so I'm over in Lightroom here, and what you need for this exercise is a scenic landscape image. Now, I'd like to encourage you to go out and shoot one if you can. I'm using one from my back catalogue. This is an image taken in the Canary Islands, and it is, I pull up the metadata on here, it's the view from Roque de los Muchachos, and that is in La Palma, one of the Canary Islands in Spain. So having got that, got your image, head into the develop module, and what I want you to do first of all is to develop it as a colour image and do the appropriate changes on there. So on mine, I've got the shadows are quite dark, so I'm just going to lift them slightly. I'm just going to give it a touch of contrast, very, very little on there. In fact, no, I will leave the contrast as it is, and that's round about it. I want some minimal changes, just enough that you need on here. And looking at my histogram, that all fits in there. So that's first image. So I'm going to save that as a snapshot and plus, and I will call that colour there. And now I am going to convert the image to black and white, but I'm going to use probably the worst method, but I want to include it in the list to show you what it does, and that is quite simply just to bring down the saturation to 0, minus 100. And that gives you a black and white image, but it's not the best way to do a conversion. So do that, and I'm going to create another snapshot. So plus, and this is desaturated. Create. Next, I'm just going to undo that change by double-clicking on the word saturation. For my next attempt at this, I'm just going to go black and white up at the top. We think that should be a good option. That will do an automatic conversion, and using that, I can then come down here and I can control it a little bit using the individual colours. So for example, the orangeness that's in there, I can lighten that up. You see how that gets a little bit lighter on there, and I can darken the blue and the aqua just to sort of darken and put some detail in the sky. So that is going to be snapshot number 3, which is going to be just black and white sliders. Let's create that one. And now I shall reset all that by double clicking on there. And over in basic, I'll go to color, and I think that was all I did with that. So now the final one, which is more the recommended approach, is to look at the profiles that are available in Lightroom. And if we go down and look at the black and white ones, we can sort of hover over these to find one that looks the most convincing for what we want. So at the moment, black and white 7 is looking quite good on here. So I'm going to go with black and white 7 as being my profile. Now I'll close that, and now on top of that I can use the contrast and clarity sliders to give it a bit more punch. So increasing the clarity, maybe just a little bit on the contrast. Don't want to lose too much detail in the shadows. I could just afford to bring the shadows up a fraction, but I can also go to those black and white sliders darken the blue a little bit, darken the aqua just a touch, and I would say that that is my conversion. So let's create another snapshot, and this one is profile plus sliders. And so now what we can do is we can step through each of these to see the difference between them. So let's start with our color image. Then we went to just desaturating it, which is a little bit insipid. Then we tried just selecting black and white and using the sliders, which is an improvement, but using the profiles plus the sliders plus contrast gives us that, which is the much better image for this. So the exercise this week is to go out, shoot a landscape, and I want you to process it to black and white in those 4 different ways. First of all, do a straightforward, simple color processing. So we've got that as the benchmark. Desaturated, then use just simple black and white with the color sliders, and then use a profile plus color sliders plus contrast and clarity. And for each of those, I've done them as snapshots, but you could do them as virtual copies. Save each of those out and post them to the Facebook group. Now, I've done it all in Lightroom. Other editing software is available. And what I would suggest, if you don't use Lightroom, maybe if you use Photoshop, you're fine. You can use the ACR filter on there to do that kind of conversion. If you're using something like Affinity, then just have a play around with the options which are available in there for black and white conversion and try out just desaturating, try any specific black and white tools that they've got, and then post those images and do it that way. So hope you're finding the exercises helpful. I'm certainly enjoying seeing them in the Facebook group. So until next time, thanks for watching and keep making great images. Bye for now. Right, so that's the before and after challenge this week. So moving along. So those are the different versions for you to have a go at with it. Nothing new in the chat. So let's head over to Lightroom and look at your images from Facebook. So we have from Sonia a backlit. This is one of her underwater macro images, and I have to say the detail on this is absolutely fantastic on there. And she's backlit it to get the hairs standing out on there. So fantastic image there, Sonia. Well done. John Bamber posted this one, which by the looks of it is a photograph of a photograph, because I can see the frame around here. Now this was from John's caving days, lit with lights behind. I think this is absolutely. I know that it's the photograph of the photograph is blurred. That's with the camera that was photographing it. But the original is absolutely stunning and incredibly well lit with the flash on there, and actually very, very well done, because it's not the easiest of environments to photograph in, and of course that would be film days as well. So it's a case of you don't look at the back of the camera to know whether you've got it. You have to just use your knowledge of lighting the flash to make it work. I would guess that John did it with a long exposure, and then people just let the flashes off at the appropriate times on there. But incredibly well done, John, on that. Then we've got a series of images from John Kiss. Now this is one of the before and after challenge sets. This is the night images. Now what we've got here is the sunset, various stages of it moving into nighttime, and we can just see how that's worked and how that range there. And I actually think the best shot on this one is this particular one with that glorious pink sky to it, because we haven't got the illumination on the building on the first one. Then we end up with the illumination in the pink sky. It looks really good. Then just a little while later, once the sun has set, you've got this nighttime blue sky. That's working great with that. And then it's starting to get later. I've not done the full range. I know John did post the full range. I just picked a few highlights from that. John Barton, a bit of street photography from John. Don't know whether you're watching tonight, John, or on the replay, but my advice on that one would be black and white. I think that would look really good in black and white. Gary Gabatas, I love the chap's trademark is his moustache. You can see as part of his on his shirt, on the ceiling, and under his nose. I think this is one where the vertical format has really worked for it. I know you've cropped it to get the vertical you've corrected the verticals on there. The only bits of advice I would say is avoid chopping off hands with there. Now it might be you weren't able to get far enough back to get the hands in, but that's the main thing. And the other thing is this flower, this leaf here. I would like to see that done away with. So in Lightroom, that's fairly straightforward in that I think I should be able to do it just like that. Yeah, okay, not perfect on the white, but if I did another one just to cover there, that didn't work. If I spent a bit more time on it, I could get rid of that as well. But I'd like to see that leaf gone because I don't think it's adding to it. In fact, it's detracting on there. But really nice image for that. And that's your images. There weren't many this week in the Facebook group. So moving along, let's have a look what's been going on in the chat. I've got a thank you from Steve Haywood. You are welcome. On there. Nothing else to say on that. So, moving along, we have member photo of the week, and I guess this one will come as no surprise, but member photo of the week this week is Andy's beach huts. I couldn't not include that. I'm afraid the one thing I have done, Andy, and you probably won't like this, is I mirrored it for the to go on the banner, simply because I didn't want to hide your huts with my logo. So I mirrored it round like that. Hope you'll forgive me on there. So that's this week's member photo of the week. And that only remains for me to tell you about next week. And that, if you've got questions, if you've got images for me to look at next week, do email them to me. Images to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. Questions to contact me at on there. And next week's theme, next Sunday, I'm calling it The Power of Perspective. I'm just going, I've sort of touched on this before, but I want to look at it again about where we take our images from and how that really affects the image, and perhaps some of the emotions that kind of view can affect, can generate in an image. So if you've got images from an unusual perspective, please post them to the Facebook group this week so I've got something to talk about, or even better, email them to me, or even better than that, do both. Put them in the Facebook group and email them to me. That would be great on there. So thanks for watching. Sorry I overran by 15 minutes. My apologies for that. Hope you found it helpful. I will see you next week, and until then, keep making great photos. Bye for now.